Hey everyone, today we have a special review. I know this album is relatively dated, but I wanted to preface with a couple of reasons for why I was reviewing this. I'm doing this review because back in May, I had planned to do a review of the new At the Drive-In LP, Inter Alia, and I wanted to do this in anticipation of the album. This one was written out, but I didn't get around to making a video for it, and once Inter Alia came out, I was less impressed than I had hoped to be, and I'm still really getting my thoughts together about it. However, I still want to make a review for that album and get this one out here as well. Alright, with that out of the way, let's get to the review. Today, we're going to be talking about Amputechture, the third album by formerly El Paso-based group the Mars Volta, in between two of their most acclaimed albums, Francis the Mute and Bedlam and Goliath. On here, the Mars Volta present their usual brand of whacked out and experimental progressive rock. It has high energy rock passages combined with some really experimental, free-form, surreal jazz. Listening to the Mars Volta is sort of like listening to a Dali painting. There is some semblance of structure, but it is laced with this almost terrifying eccentricity. And this album is no deviation from that formula. It starts off with the quiet and haunting track Vicarious Atonement, which features some quiet guitar work along with some ambience and a very bluesy performance by the vocalist Cedric Bixler-Zavala. As the song finishes, it gets extremely loud and dissonant, and immediately cuts into the longest track of the album, Tetragrammaton. This song comes out of the gate with this grand and foreboding guitar melody, along with some intense jazzy drumming by John Theodore. The song eventually quiets down a bit with some more haunting guitar passages and another unsettling performance by Cedric. The song goes through different emotions and intensities like this throughout its almost 17-minute runtime. The latter parts of this song feature intense drumming guitar passages, weird experimentation with noises, and there's a lot of distorting in the instruments. This is all topped off with Cedric's manic vocal performance and surreal lyrics. Most of the lyrics across the Mars Volta's discography are so eccentric and surreal to the point of losing meaning. Sort of like this line from Tetragrammaton, where Cedric says, "The kiosk in my temporal lobe is shaped like Rosalind Carter. She says my map is whole again but torn face down." The album follows through these first two songs in a structure almost the whole way through, with quiet songs offering a break between these manic episodes, although they almost always break in their own brand of insanity near the end, most notably on the first song Vicarious Atonement, on the song Asís Los Magdalena, and El Ciervo Vulnerado. To further exacerbate the strangeness, the transitions between song passages are extremely jarring and seemingly come out of nowhere. It feels like there's little connection between some of these ideas explored. The band managed to bring these ideas together, however, by reintroducing them later in the song and creating an almost narrative arc by ending the song with a similar passage that introduced the song, most notably on Tetragrammaton and Mech Amputechture. This is probably done because, unlike most other albums in their discography, this is not a concept album, but every song tries to tell a story, and all of them have vaguely religious themes, hence titles like Tetragrammaton and Mech Amputechture. It's hard to say exactly what these ideas are, though, because of how strange and erratic the lyrics are. The biggest issue with these tracks, though, is that they usually go way longer than they should. While Vicarious Atonement is fine because it presents the most interesting ideas of these quieter, longer tracks, and Vermicide is a concise and straightforward 4 minutes, the other two quieter tracks go way longer than they should. El Ciervo Vulnerado lasts almost 9 minutes. These songs could easily be trimmed down and would be much more bearable, along with bringing the album length down to something more reasonable than 76 minutes. While there are good albums that last that long, it's really exhausting to sit down and listen to an album for over an hour. It also doesn't help that these songs end so abruptly and go immediately into the next song, so any feeling of pacing kind of goes out of the window as soon as the next song starts. This is especially a problem on the first two songs where there's this freeform sax solo that immediately explodes into Tetragrammaton. The whole experience is really jarring and uncomfortable. There's also the dissonant and uncomfortable guitar part at the end of Asís Los Magdalena. The most glaring example, though, is the last track that starts to build an intensity near the end, in the same way that the intro track does, and then it just immediately ends the album. There's no finale, and it makes parts of this album an extremely frustrating listen. This album could definitely benefit from more pacing. However, when things are good on this album, they are totally fantastic, and it has some of my favorite Mars Volta songs. Mech Amputechture, which is my favorite Mars Volta track, features this grand, high-energy intro with a catchy saxophone lead, and maintains this slow but intense drum beat for the duration of the song. There is a part near the end where things get a bit unhinged, but it brings it back to reality with a melodic guitar riff and the saxophone from the beginning of the song. Overall, this is an enjoyable listen. It starts off with some extremely powerful tracks, but it loses steam by the end and is overall fairly exhausting. It also has a bit too much bloat with these quieter tracks and some uncomfortable dissonant experimental passages that go on for too long. It's absolutely worth checking out the first half, though, with its creative meshing of all these weird and crazy ideas into coherent songs with interesting flavors of progressive rock, blues, and Latin jazz. What do you think of this album? Are you interested by the band's brand of experimentation, or do you feel like it's overly bloated and gets in the way of the music? I would love to hear your thoughts on this album, because it seems like a pretty overlooked album in their discography, and it's pretty great despite all these really frustrating aspects of it. Okay, that's going to be it for this one. I'll see you guys next time.